So, question on really just both quarterbacks for Michigan and Ohio State. Are we expecting too much of them? I mean, like they're both young. Like CJ Stroud, redshirt freshman. I mean, he had some playing time last year, but he didn't even throw a pass. I mean, he looks fantastic, but some of his passes and some of his decisions are sometimes you're like, like kind of scratch your chin a little bit. But like, are we asking too much of them? Like, they're gonna have to go through their growing pains, right?
I don't know. I just think when you keep getting multiple quarterbacks in a row that are just amazing, it's hard to say that because I mean, ever since we got Haskins and then we get Justin Fields, and I think people just assume that everyone is just going to be like, third year Justin Fields right from day one. And
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, his statistics are pretty close to
Oh yeah, they
to
look
it. I mean,
fantastic.
it's incredible. And I would say really like his only real flaw, at least in this game, was just he refused to run the ball at all.
Hmm.
And I don't know why just a few QB runs would have probably loosened up the inside run game quite a bit, but he just would not even run at all.
I saw something about that, and is this just popped into my head. This notion is he worried about running because if he even gets hurt, if he even has like a scratched thumb, basically like there's a backup behind him, like a couple of them that are ready to take his job. I mean, he's got to know that, right? I mean, that's got to be a piece of stress, in his back of his mind. He knows he's got actually three quarterbacks. The Quinn Ewers, granted, he's not really probably much of a threat this year, but two other guys are right behind him and they're ready to take. Like, I think I would probably be careful too. Like, all you have to do is get nicked up for one game, then they come in the next game, have a great game against someone terrible. Like he got injured in this Penn State game. They go play Nebraska. Nebraska's going to give up a lot of points to the Buckeyes I think it's this weekend. The next guy in looks fantastic, and then all of a sudden, all the fans are like, "Hey, play that dude. He's got 5 stars. CJ Stroud only
Well,
had 4 stars."
that already happened earlier when Stroud took a week off, and the backups were good, but not anywhere near his level, even against a bad opponent. So I don't think. I think
Akron.
people were calling, people were calling for the backup earlier, but once we saw that the backups weren't as good as the starter, I don't think that was as much of an issue. And I think the only thing I could think of is either the coaches are telling him not to run, or he is just worried that maybe he would re-injure whatever was going on with his shoulder the first two weeks of the year.
Yeah, maybe that. Yeah, I mean, that could be it too. And I want to come back to a question that I asked you in the last show that you totally dodged. You dodged beautifully because I forgot to hold you accountable. I asked if you know where I'm going to. What do you think is going to happen? What's your roster going to look like? The quarterback roster going to look like next year? I mean, you've got a 5-star. What's his name? McCord.
Yep.
He's a 5-star. Then you've got the other guy. I can't remember his name. I think he's maybe like
Jack
a high
Miller.
4-star. Like, he's a talented guy. And then you've got Quinn Ewers. Like, he's going to be ready. He's like, hey, I've been here a year. I put in my time. So 2022 is going to have a lot of expectations, a lot of hey, when am I going to play? Kind of instances with these quarterbacks. What are your thoughts on that? How many quarterbacks that are on the roster today are going to be on there the same time next year?
I think we lose at least one and maybe two. I'm not sure. So I think for sure we're going to have obviously the starter, and then I think Quinn Ewers is still going to be here too. And I think there's going to be no matter what happens at the end of this year, I think there's still going to be a significant QB battle next year between Ewers and CJ Stroud. And I think, McCord probably has the highest chance of leaving because he's higher. He's recruited a little bit higher. So I think that he might be, hold on a second. He might be the one that's more likely to go because more people are probably going to want him versus Jack Miller hasn't really played it that much, even in mop-up time, and he's not as highly regarded. So maybe he might be more of the team player who knows he's probably not going to start, and he probably doesn't have as many offers from other people too. So maybe he would be fine with just being a backup, but I don't know.
The NIL has really kind of done a number on this, like, and the transfer portal and the NIL. Like now, like no one wants to sit now because you don't get NIL money, the good NIL money, generally, unless you're at the quarterback position anyway, unless you're starting. I know Quinn Ewers has, he's got a great deal because he's a generational quarterback. Buckeyes don't want to lose him. They're going to do everything to keep him, obviously. But this is going to be really interesting to see what happens because this is now their livelihood. Like, it's not just like the the good old days where quarterbacks like, hey, I'll bide my time. I'll redshirt my first year, learn the system. Maybe I'll start starting or playing at my redshirt junior. And then, next 2 years, I'll have 2 years to like really be like the guy and go in and then maybe get to the NFL. Like those days are gone. Like, well, now your money is at stake.
The one thing that I think that it could be a situation where he wouldn't have a problem, playing a little bit as backup duty, the primary backup next year, and maybe situationally like your freshman is this year, because if Stroud is having another solid year, he could go pro after next year anyway. So then, Ewers should have just been in high school anyway this year. So he still should be a senior. So it's not like he's even really, just because, he has technically been, and I'm not even sure how the pro rules work. Usually it's 3 years removed from high school, but
right.
So I don't know how that rule works when you leave high school a year early.
That's a good question. Got no clue.
Yeah, so that's another thing to think about. But I would think that he wouldn't care as much since he's technically a senior, and I wouldn't expect that he would leave after 1 year, knowing that after next year, CJ's almost definitely gone. And the only reason I would see him leaving is if CJ decided to come back for another year after that. Then I could see maybe he's definitely not going to want to sit then. But I wouldn't think that sitting 1 year while also playing a decent amount, because our starters usually come out in half the games, after the first drive of the third quarter anyway. So he would get a ton of playing time. Plus, he would probably play as long as he's even close to as good as advertised. He was going to be getting some reps even during when the game's in doubt anyway. So he should be playing a decent amount no matter what.
So it sounds like you're predicting at least one quarterback is not there in 2022, right?
Yeah, it's one or two. I think that the main ones are going to stay, but I think unfortunately we're probably going to lose McCord.